Camera Command Center in Juba. My name is Okot Emmanuel. Well, earlier on I did say we'll be discussing about the permanent constitution making process. Well, today we are going to have an assessment of the progress in the implementation of the revitalized peace agreement with specific focus on the permanent constitution making process from the perspective of the constituted Joint Monitoring and Evaluation Commission. It is almost 3 years now since the parties signed the revitalized peace agreement in the Ethiopian capital Addis Ababa. This news was received with so much joy and hope all over the world, and in South Sudan, who witnessed 5 years of brutal conflict, the signing of the revitalized peace agreement meant an end to violence, insecurity, human rights abuses, displacement, hunger, and the refugee life. According to the implementation schedule, all the provisions of the revitalized agreement was to be executed in 32 months, followed by general election for South Sudan. Some of the key provisions in the peace accord to be implemented include the constitutions of the transitional government of national unity, permanent ceasefire and transitional security arrangement, strategies to address the humanitarian crisis in the country, and reconstruction reforms in the economy and management of resource as well as finances. Other key issues stipulated in the revitalized agreement include transitional justice, accountability and reconciliation among South Sudanese. What milestones and successes can we talk about in relation to permanent constitution making process as enshrined in the peace agreement? Well, to put this question into perspective and measure progress in the permanent constitution making process and the peace agreement in general, I'm now joined by Stephen Ola, RGMX Senior Advisor on Legal and Constitution Affairs. Stephen, it's my pleasure to have you in the studio this evening.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel, and our listeners this evening. Good evening.
Well, Stephen, welcome once again. And to begin with, where are we now when it comes to the permanent constitution making process?
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, once again. I can say we have made very significant progress in kickstarting the permanent constitution making process. I want to give you in perspective what the requirement of the other acres of the revitalized peace agreement is in terms of the permanent constitution making process. And one needs to look at chapter 6 of the agreement. Under chapter 6, it is clearly provided that the revitalized transitional government of national unity shall initiate and oversee a permanent constitution making process for the Republic of South Sudan. And the constitution is expected to be completed within 24 months into the transitional period. Now, there are a number of parameters that have already been agreed by the parties to the agreement, including that this constitution shall be based on the principle of supremacy of the people of South Sudan. They shall initiate a federal and democratic system of government that reflects the character of South Sudan, that the process will guarantee peace and stability, national unity and territorial integrity of the Republic of South Sudan, that the permanent constitution shall promote people's participation in governance of the country through democratic, free and fair election and the devolution of powers, that it will respect ethnic, regional diversity and communal rights, among others, that it will ensure the provision of basic needs of the people through establishment of a framework for fair and equitable growth and access to natural and national resources, that it will promote and facilitate regional and international cooperation, that it will commit the people of South Sudan to a peaceful resolution of conflict, among others. Now, in terms of the process that will get the country to the permanent constitution, it is provided again under chapter 6 that in the 4th month of the transitional period, the reconstituted Joint Monitoring and Evaluation Commission, the RGMX, shall convene a workshop for the parties to agree on the details for the making of the permanent constitution. Now, the outcome of this workshop will form the basis for a legislation to be enacted to govern the constitution making process. As I speak now, tomorrow we will launch officially the 3 days workshop, which is expected to agree on the details of the permanent constitution making process. Thereafter, the outcome will be submitted to the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, who are tasked with developing the law, drafting the legislation, which will now spell out the processes that will be followed up to the inauguration of the permanent constitution.
Well, Stephen, with due respect, our listeners may want to also understand the gist of this constitutional making process. Is it people-driven or parties-driven?
Actually, the RACRIS is very clear in terms of the ownership and the making of this permanent constitution. If you look at Article 6.13 of the RACRIS, it provides that the process of the permanent constitution making shall be led and owned by the people of South Sudan. And the provision before that, 6.12, says, in drafting the permanent constitution, lessons shall be drawn from South Sudan common law, constitutional history, and experiences, and this agreement. So certainly this is a South Sudanese constitution to be made, led, and owned by the South Sudanese.
Well, what is your general view on the pace at which the revitalized peace agreement is being implemented? We'll get back to the constitution itself.
Certainly there's been a lot of delays in the timelines provided for in the agreement, but you can't underscore the fact that significant progress has been made. This is a political agreement among its 5 political parties who have an history of fighting, and so it will naturally take a bit of time to build trust, as well as to get the necessary resources to implement the several provisions. So in summary, some progress has been made, the delays and challenges notwithstanding.
Well, let's delve deeper in Chapter 6 of the agreement that requires a number of milestones to be met, including the convening of a workshop to agree on the details for the permanent constitution making process, the enactment of legislation on the basis of the outcome of the workshop that will govern the constitution making process, the constitution of the National Constitution Review Commission, the appointment of a preparatory subcommittee for convening the National Constitutional Conference, and the transformation of the Transitional Assembly for the purpose of adopting the permanent constitution. What milestone have we achieved in regards to all these levels?
Certainly, the most critical under Chapter 6 is the requirement under Article 6.1 that the Aratigunu should initiate this process. And I can tell you this has begun with the Council of Ministers endorsing a roadmap prepared by the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, which is the lead ministry tasked with the implementation of Chapter 6 and the legal and judicial aspect of the agreement. Now, what follows there is the workshop of the parties to agree on the details of the making of this permanent constitution. There are already steps that have been agreed under the RACRIS, but these will all have to be part of a comprehensive legislation to govern the constitution making process. The question of the reconstitution of the National Constitutional Review Commission is supposed to be guided by the law to be enacted, and that will be spelled out. How should the reconstituted National Constitutional Review Commission look like? What should be its mandate in terms of this process? What would the composition of the National Constitutional, of the subcommittee for the convening of the National Constitutional Conference look like? So these and other questions will be determined by the representatives of who will be participating at the workshop starting tomorrow.
Well, all the stages outlined above, just like you have mentioned, are to be completed within 24 months of the transitional period. Has this been achieved? And if not, what does it mean for the peace agreement?
Certainly, as I said, it hasn't been achieved, but it is starting tomorrow officially. Again, it started with the endorsement of the roadmap of the Ministry of Justice. Tomorrow, we take another giant step. The outcome of the workshop will be presented to the Ministry of Justice by next week, and the Ministry of Justice will embark on the drafting of the legislation. Now, that legislation has the potential to outline the sequencing of events within the remaining period of the transitional period.
Well, you talk about the legislation. The same chapter we're talking about, this chapter 6, talks about enactment of that legislation on the basis that the outcome of the workshop that will govern the constitution-making process. It's now 2 weeks since the president appointed members of the national parliament, which is behind schedule. They are not yet sworn in. Do you think this head bearing?
Actually, the reconstitution or TLN is a big step in this regard, because certainly what it means, and we do expect that the swearing in will be any time from now, that once the law is ready from the Ministry of Justice, there will be a reconstituted TNLA in place to deliberate and endorse that legislation, and that legislation will immediately come into law to govern the process. As I said again, the processes has begun, and there have been significant delays at all stages, but we are at a very critical moment now that the workshop is starting tomorrow, and we expect, and it's bound to take 3 days, with the hope that by next week we will have agreement on the process that the constitutional making process have to follow.
Well, thank you, Stephen. Let's go for a short break. Once we return, we'll be looking into, you already mentioned that the workshop is kick-starting tomorrow. You'll also share with us some of the teams and who is to attend this workshop, and also what is top on the agenda. That'll be coming shortly. Stay with us.
Thank you.
Browsing has been made faster, better, and affordable with the newly introduced 50% extra bonus. Yes, Zain South Sudan has introduced 50% extra bonus added to your daily, weekly, and monthly data bundle subscriptions. Be the first to experience and tell your friends about this exciting offer. To subscribe, dial *102#. Check your remaining data bundles by dialing *101*3#. It's all bigger and better.
Zain, a wonderful world.
Welcome back from that short break. You're listening to the Sundown Show. My name is Sokot Emmanuel, and with me in the studio is Stephen Ola, RGMX Senior Advisor on Legal and Constitutional Affairs. We're basically talking about the forthcoming, constitutional making process. That is the workshop that is kick-starting tomorrow. Stephen, welcome back.
Thank you very much.
Well, we understand that there's a workshop coming tomorrow. Fast track the permanent constitution making process. What is top on the agenda of this workshop?
Certainly, as provided for in the revitalized agreement, the RGMEC, the Reconstituted Joint Monitoring and Evaluation Commission, is mandated to convene a workshop for the parties to the agreement to agree on the details of the permanent constitution making process, which workshop will kickstart tomorrow with the official launch at the Freedom Hall by His Excellency President Salva Kiir Mayardit, President of the Republic of South Sudan, and all the vice presidents and several dignitaries. We expect about 250 participants in that workshop, including the delegates who have been nominated by all the parties to the revitalized peace agreement and the stakeholders to the agreement and other invited guests. This workshop will be facilitated by the Max Planck Foundation. Under Article 6.8, it's provided that the workshop shall be facilitated and moderated by an institute known internationally for constitution making process, and we at the RJMEC identified and engaged the Max Planck Foundation, which is a very reputable institute known worldwide for constitution making processes, with a very long history in South Sudan, dating back to Southern Sudan and the making of the interim as well as the current transitional constitution. So they will be facilitating the participants. Among the key issues to be discussed at the workshop are some of the questions, the technical questions as regard the constitution making process, which were left unaddressed during the high-level revitalization forum. For example, who will draft the constitution? What would be the composition and mandate of the reconstituted National Constitutional Review Commission? Question about the composition of the subcommittee for the convening of the National Constitutional Conferences, as well as the timeline that this event should take. Again, you said the overall timeline is 24 months, but what is the sequencing of events within this 24 months? So those are some of the key issues to be discussed at the workshop. The way the workshop has been designed is that it will take 3 days, with the first day being the open session, an opening session where everyone is invited. And for the subsequent 2 days, this will be closed to the delegates nominated by the different parties, the ITGUNU, the SPLM-IO, the FDs, the South Sudan Opposition Alliance, SOA, the other political parties, and the representatives of other South Sudanese stakeholders. We have women's representatives, we have youth representatives, we have eminent persons, we have faith-based leaders, we have civil society, we have academia, and we have business communities. They all have their representatives who will be participating at the workshop.
Well, apart from all this group you've mentioned, are there other stakeholders that will be attending the workshop? For instance, the grantors of the peace agreement.
For the launch, yes, the launch is open to all the stakeholders to the agreement and eminent South Sudanese and representatives of different groups. All the diplomatic missions and mechanisms of the agreement and government will be attending tomorrow's opening. But the 2 days will be closed to only 47 representatives of the parties and stakeholders.
Well, for a listener who is tuned to the Sundown Show right now, is there a theme for the workshop? If it is there, can you share with us?
Yes, the theme for the 3 days workshop, which kickstarts tomorrow, is designing the path to a durable constitution for the Republic of South Sudan. And that is the overriding principle that will guide the deliberation in the next 3 days.
Well, 27 minutes past 4 p.m. at the command center in Juba. Let's try to engage in our listeners. Maybe they want to ask some pertinent question about the workshop that is forthcoming. That's tomorrow. Please join the conversation on a text line on 0913-986-986, or you can call us live on 0911-986-986 and ask a question or ask for a clarity about the permanent constitution making process, the workshop that is kick-starting tomorrow. The line is open, and share with us your thoughts on our discussion. Somebody with us on the line. Hello, good evening. Well, I've lost that caller. Get back with us on the studio lines. You can as well share your thoughts with us on our Facebook page, iRadio, and you can also ask question to my guest in the studio, Stephen Ola, RJMX Senior Advisor on Legal and Constitutional Affairs. Basically, we are talking about the permanent constitution making process with a focus on the forthcoming workshop that is scheduled for 25th to 27th?
Correct.
Yes. Somebody with us on the line. Good evening. Hello, good evening.
Good evening, brother.
Who am I speaking to? What's your name and where you're calling from, please?
You are speaking to Garang Chong Gog Machara.
Well, Garang, welcome on board and share with us, please.
Yes, I want which question?
Well, Garang, please tune to radio and ask a question later. We're basically talking about the permanent constitution making process, and basically with a focus on the forthcoming workshop that is scheduled for tomorrow to 27. Somebody that's on the line. Good evening. Hello, good evening.
Yes, Manuel.
Yes, welcome on board. Your name and where you're calling from?
Choldang in POC.
Choldang in POC. Welcome and share with us.
Thank you. Then my question to the Argentine representative board senior advisor is that as all the process has been led, since all of us know that the process has been led. Now it is a time in which all the process of election should be done this time instead of doing all these things. Then,
we seek for clarity for your question.
Yes. Which time in which you will be using so that all this process will be taken, so that the election will not take any problem or will cause any problem. Because if the time is limited, then all the process that will be just mix up with the time of election will even cause problems.
Are you talking basically about the 24 months for the permanent constitution making process?
24 months.
Well, I thank you, Choldang.
Yes.
Well, it's Choldang from POC here in Juba. I think Stephen is, when a listener asks a question, we answer one so that we don't leave us out. Welcome and answer to him.
Thank you very much, Choldang, for that very good question. It's a legitimate question. Do we have enough time to complete the permanent constitution making process? Certainly, as I said, the agreement provides that this process of making a permanent constitution for the Republic of South Sudan should be completed within 24 months into the transitional period. And we know over 15 months have now passed into the transitional period. And we are just beginning with the most significant stage of a workshop to determine the process itself. So a lot of time has passed, but these considerations are part of the discussion in the next 2 days to the representatives of the parties and stakeholders who are agreeing on a process, and their task is to agree on a practical steps to be taken to ensure the completion of the permanent constitution making process within the available time. So we hope that the outcome will be alive to the fact that we are running out of time, and the agreement said this has to be completed within 24 months.
Well, somebody is with us here on the line. Hello, good evening. Hello, you live on the Sundown Show. Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes,
Marco Court, I radio.
Oh, I radio. Sorry.
Naam. Well, hello, good evening.
Hello.
Yes, Emmanuel Panador.
Yeah, controller.
Welcome and share with us, Emmanuel.
Ana derasalo. Jolu kita jemek kala ja.
Naam.
Alumon Nouru Lenina kan fi workshop albi padao okura.
Naam.
Fita dostur fita Junu Sudan. Ana derasalo. Dostur alumon gamul be. The dostur fita political party wala national constitution amendment wala, how do you call it?
Amendment. This we call this permanent constitution making process.
Especially ato fita constitution. Eja de constitution fita dola anena mader sigil hajat al yan beseja kalam fita party nina mader kelima include the constitution. Kande constitution kelikun country constitution ma fita party ma fita bidifa tani wala bidifa rei nina mader sigil hajat ai.
Stephen, basically is reframing an earlier question I asked you about, is it a people-driven process or is it a party-driven process? Is asking whether this is a party constitution or a national permanent constitution. You have to clarify that to Emmanuel.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. I think that is I tried to hear the same question from Choldang, actually. Is this people's driven process? I would say yes. What is starting tomorrow is, and let me separate it, what is starting tomorrow is a continuation of a discussion which was had during the peace process in Khartoum and Addis Ababa to basically agree on the process that this will follow. So the 3 days workshop is a small negotiation among the parties to agree on some of the aspects which were left unaddressed during high-level revitalization, and also clarify on some of the issues which were not robustly tackled at the peace process. But what will now follow in the 24 months given in the agreement is providing the framework for the making of the constitution. At the workshop, there will be a legislation which will now govern the making of the constitution.
In layman term, you can say bush clearing.
Exactly. This one is actually digging the path that will be followed. And then in action making, this process will include a robust civic education, citizens' participation, all kinds of consultation, all kinds of... So there will be opportunity, as reflected in this agreement, that the making of this process should be South Sudanese led and South Sudanese owned. But the workshop itself is a forum for the parties to resolve some of the process gaps which were not resolved during the Addis Ababa and Khartoum phases of the negotiation.
Well, let's get somebody on the line here. Hello, good evening.
Oh, good, Emmanuel.
James Dor.
Yes, how are you?
I'm doing good, brother. Welcome on board and share with us.
Yeah, welcome. I welcome the guest in the studio.
Thank you.
And I would like also to share some questions. You know, this process of permanent constitution in the Republic of South Sudan, it has been a long awaited constitution that is not given a road forward to make sure this constitution is prepared. But today, you say that the workshop will take place on how this constitution will be prepared. And we have seen so many violations within the revitalized peace agreement. And the constitution that is going to take place is a constitution created by the revitalized peace agreement. And revitalized peace agreement now is too much violated, and some mechanisms are moving slowly. What can we, the citizens of this country, hope for in this constitution, since the part of the revitalized peace agreement has been violated? For example, the security is not, the unified forces is not yet graduated, and parliament is not yet, is still not incomplete. The state government is incomplete. So what will give us the citizen hope on the constitution? Yes, citizens should have representatives, but the main point is the political parties within the revitalized peace agreement. Many have been knocked out. For example, OPP is now being used as a one-man OPP. So how come for us to be the part and partial, since we are calling for fair and free democracy in the country, and these things are not put in place? So how will that constitution look like if some people are neglected with their right, the right of the people who they have really?
Well, there are a lot of critical pending tasks, talking about the training, graduation, and deployment of the forces, and talking about other, basically reconstitute the national parliament. They have not yet took oath of office, and it says, how can we really make this constitution? Also talking about, dragging of feet among the peace parties.
Thank you very much, James, for that very good question. Again, Emmanuel, as I said, there's been a lot of challenges in the implementation of the revitalized peace agreement. No doubt about that. There's been a lot of delays in the performance of very critical tasks which are provided within the specified timelines. We are far behind schedules in the implementation of some very critical aspects, but that cannot, again, overshadow the very good progress that has been made by the parties almost 3 years after the signing of the agreement. There are some obvious steps that have been taken already. You mentioned the formation of the governance even though not all the components of the state government have been formed. We've seen the revitalized transitional National Legislative Assembly appointed. Again, as I said, there are challenges in terms of the modalities for all the different parties, the 5 parties, to harmonize their lists sometimes, but also to make progress at the pace desired by the citizens, but also the pace prescribed in the agreement. That said, when it comes to the permanent constitution making process, what the workshop will do in the next 3 days is to clear the road, as Emmanuel said, clear the bush, for the people of South Sudan to now come and influence the content of the permanent constitution, to ensure that there's a break from some of these challenges that we are talking about. So we expect that when it comes to the discussion on the content of the permanent constitution itself, there will be sufficient guarantees by the people of South Sudan themselves to ensure that the constitution that will be enacted is pro-people and that it will be honored by all the political actors, whether they like it or not. So I think this is the opportunity we are talking about, setting the framework for the people of South Sudan to make their own constitution that will govern how they want to be governed.
Well, somebody who is with us also here online. Hello, good evening. I've lost caller right there. Get back to me on 0911 986 986. Good evening. Hello.
Yes, hello.
Where are you calling from?
Yes, Choldeng in POC. Once again, I have another question.
Choldeng, can you give opportunity to others?
Yes, let me have a question.
Okay, I'll give you that opportunity. 30 seconds.
My question is that then the guys in this video say that for the workshop is and also to do with done in Khartoum and also in Ethiopia. Therefore, if the party negotiate again and they will disagree, what will be the position of our general? That is my question.
Well, I thank you, Choldeng, for that question. Well, he's saying the pending task basically that is going to be ironed out. If the parties disagree, what will be the position of the RJ make?
Thank you. I should add that the disagreement at the high-level revitalization forum was not because the parties could not agree on them. They were because the parties thought these were technical details that did not require political agreement. A lot of political agreements have already been reached. If you read chapter 6, all the contentious issues have been resolved. What remains are technical constitution making framework, which the parties thought it would be best discussed by competent technical representatives. And I can give you my word that the nominees that have been submitted to this workshop are not the politicians who were members of the constitution making bodies who have been nominated. So our anticipation, our expectation that the 2 days discussion will be very technical in terms of constitutional making steps with comparison of what has happened in South Sudan history and also other places in the region.
Well, thank you. Hello, good evening. Good evening, live on the Sundown Show. Get back to me on 0911 986 986 or text me a message on 0913 986 986 and join the conversation live here at Command Center in Juba. Hello, good evening. Yes, please be a little audible. I'm not getting it clear.
Yeah, I'm Felix.
Felix, your voice is always very low. Can you be a little audible?
Okay, yeah, the constitution process making is okay, but now the issue is what is this constitution? Because the law of the country needs to be kept by security personnel. Now, when is the security arrangement? That is my question.
Well, I'm afraid we might have not gotten you right, but I'm going to rephrase this question that but law is being taken by the security personnel. Is that what you've gotten, Stephen?
I think his question more was when will we complete the security arrangement?
Well,
yeah,
he's talking about basically, training, deployment, and all that,
and unification of forces. I think again those are the significant requirements of the revitalized peace agreement, and there are significant progress made in terms of the cantonment training of the universities we receive in the RJMEC, is that plans are underway for the graduation and the redeployment. Challenges again notwithstanding. So we expect that the non-implementation of one aspect or non-completion of one aspect should not hold the agreement hostage. There's been progress. The parliament is being reconstituted, the governance are in place, and this cumulative implementation will give momentum for even the permanent constitution making process.
Well, earlier on you did talk about the concept.
Permanent constitution making process will be people driven, is to call the fact that the agreement requires it demands